today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek here.
Katie here.
And Jason.
I see that smile creep across your face. You are now back to work, sir.
I'm back to work, which I'm not happy about. I'm still on the beaches of Hawaii in my mind.
But you hear the shouting of me bright and early for the podcast. I saw it just like wash over you. There was a certain expression you gave. Anyway, let's we got a bunch of stories from over the weekend. Let's start with Alec Baldwin. This is a huge story that came out about the FBI concluding in its report that Alec Baldwin on the set of Rust actually pulled the trigger, pulled his finger, and that's what fired the gun that killed Helena Hutchins. This is a huge development because remember, in the wake of the tragedy, Alec Baldwin did an interview. He went on television, which we found very surprising as lawyers, and he said, I didn't fire that gun. All I did was cock the hammer back. And something must have misfired, meaning the hammer must have hit the bullet, and that's why the bullet left the chamber, but I certainly didn't pull the trigger. Well, the FBI conducted a ton of tests on, it's unclear whether it's an identical gun or the actual gun, but they said this gun can't fire that way. Just doesn't work. We tried the hammer thing. All the hammer would do is maybe set off some spark that allows an explosion in the gun, but no release of a cartridge. So they said it's impossible. So Alec Baldwin did one of two things. He either didn't remember what he actually did, or he lied.
Mm-hmm. But either way, it doesn't really matter, right? We now have him pulling the actual trigger and somebody dying as a result. It may matter for him criminally. From a civil perspective, I don't really think it matters at this point, right? He is fully culpable, at least from a monetary point of view, for the damage caused to Helena Hutchins' widower and daughter, I believe, who no longer has a mother. And this is a bad moment for Alec Baldwin, both because of the eventual of the findings of the FBI, but also because he got up on George Stephanopoulos and he said something he didn't need to say, which was he cornered himself into a position that he never pulled the trigger. And as a lawyer, you would never want your client to go out there, give statements that can all be used against you. They can't actually help you in any way in court. They're not admissible. He's going to have to get up and testify to that again. And meanwhile, he's already on record committed to the position that he's taken. He cannot get out of that. It's just the height of hubris and stupidity.
It is. Well, and at the time, weren't we all like, there's no way he absolutely pulled the trigger? I mean, everyone was like, what is he talking about? So this wasn't
although
that
it was
shocking.
like this antiquated gun, we didn't know how it worked.
He was leaning on the idea that this is an old revolver. You guys don't understand. You can sometimes see in movies where they just hit the hammer a bunch of times. This is not how these guns actually work on movie sets, and the FBI has now proved that. When he did the interview, what was he thinking? That there's an onslaught of negative attention that people think I shot this woman. I need to get out in front of it to save whatever remnants of my career are left. And he's a smart guy, right? So you can imagine him overpowering his lawyers. No lawyer advised him to go on George Stephanopoulos. To the contrary, his lawyers
and they weren't
said,
sitting next to him. You
Alex,
see those interviews often where a client is sitting next to the lawyer on the couch at the Today Show. His lawyer was not in the room and wasn't going to be in the room because Alec Baldwin was not going to be held back from what he wanted to say.
This is the problem with being too smart for your own good. You actually, as a client, want to be someone, as a lawyer, you want a client who hands over their life to you and says, I'm in a lot of trouble. Tell me exactly what to do and I'll follow the rules. Whereas Alec Baldwin is a sophisticated client. And that's the worst kind of client in a lot of ways because they know too much and they know just enough to get themselves in trouble. This is a bad move.
But let me ask a question. Will he be held, will this work against him in a civil case? Because his job as the actor on that set was to pull the trigger. Right? Like, even though this has come out now that he did.
He contended that he didn't.
So even though he went on an interview and said, I didn't do it, and now the FBI is saying, well, you did, does it really matter?
The point that it matters is it calls his credibility into question, right? He has now taken a position that the FBI, now he's going to have his own experts who are going to say, oh, the FBI is full of crap and he didn't pull the trigger. But to the extent that you buy what the FBI is saying and their forensics people who are presumably the best, he got up on George Stephanopoulos and at the very least was wrong about what happened. So how can you trust that he was right about other things? And at the worst, if you don't like him, you don't buy it, that he lied about it. And if he lied about this, then everything else he's saying was a lie as well. Why isn't it possible that he got up there and not thinking that the gun was loaded, because he didn't, he actually pulled the trigger.
Right.
At which point, that's sort of a better argument than he just hit the hammer. And I don't know.
This is now more for his lawyers to deal with in the trial, because now his credibility is in question. If he had been quiet, they don't have to deal with this particular issue. Now they have to grapple with the fact that he said something that was untrue on a huge interview. Now, I do think he'll have ways of saying, like, I was overwhelmed. He might bring in some psychiatrists that you don't remember when you're in a traumatic moment exactly what you're doing.
He remembered it perfully at Stephanopoulos.
Step-by-step detail.
That's the problem. He can't now say, maybe I was wrong. I was confused. It was hazy, the fog of war. He can't say that because he went on Stephanopoulos. He was totally clear in his testimony. He didn't say he was confused.
Yes.
My guess is he'll say now the FBI is wrong. I still did not pull that trigger.
That's what he's going to say. He's going to
painted himself into that corner.
But that is his only argument now is that the FBI is wrong, and you're leaving it to the jury to believe that before.
The FBI is a disinterested party who came in and investigated after the fact. He's obviously an interested party. It's a nightmare for his lawyer to have to deal with the inconsistency of the FBI's conclusion versus, the FBI doesn't have an axe to grind with Alec Baldwin in any meaningful sense, and he now has to make that claim. So it's going to be
Speaking of problems with one's lawyers, Amber Heard is moving on from hers. Crazy, huh?
Elaine fired.
Is it that crazy?
Sorry,
So
Elaine.
Elaine's off the case. As lawyers, I looked at this and I said, oh, Elaine's a trial specialist, and they're now bringing in an appellate team. This is not all that confusing. If Elaine is not allowed to sort of participate in the appeal in any meaningful capacity in terms of like helping the appellate lawyers make their arguments, describing what happened in the trial, maybe, but you do generally get a different team of specialists, don't you?
You do, except that her law firm, Elaine Brett Hoff's law firm, has an appellate team to it. It could have taken this up on appeal. It seemed they would have. They filed in the trial court the documents suggesting that they were going to appeal. I think you're giving it a that's very possible. They would always do this, go to a more specialized trial appellate firm. Ballard Spahr, the firm that she has now hired, is a very good firm.
Shot.
It's very reputable. But I think that Elaine Bredhoff, this is
it's an indictment of what she did.
It's an indictment.
Well,
right?
and you can
She's
believe-
been indicted so many times, but this is the most recent indictment.
Well,
This
during the
law
whole
firm is
trial,
gonna
everyone was
destroy.
everyone was talking about how Elaine maybe was not doing the best job for
She
Amber.
was outclassed.
Yeah.
She was outclassed.
I mean-
And this guarantees that they will take the reins off. Ballard Spahr has no loyalty to Elaine Bredhoff. If you hire her like appellate partner at her shop, they're going to sort of soft pedal how badly she did because that's their law partner. It's someone they work with. Ballard Spahr is going to paint her as the most inept, inexperienced, terrible lawyer that blew this trial because they have to. That's what will potentially save Amber.
Yes.
But it's going to be nasty. Like they're going
Poor
to say
Elaine.
horrible things about the way she conducted this trial, and maybe for good reason.
Let's say one positive thing. Elaine looked like she gave great hugs. In that trial, she gave great hugs to Amber, right?
Yes.
And
That
that's
is
important. That's important in
Well,
your
and
legal
she-
team.
One of the things you look for in a
She was
lawyer.
classy in leaving, so maybe she's just trying to soften the landing of what they're going to say. But she said, this is the perfect time to pass the baton. I pledge to Amber and her appellate team my complete cooperation and assistance as they move forward on a path towards success. So that's what a good lawyer says is, it's time for me to
But
hand
pass
in
the
my...
baton is interesting because, a baton is a metaphor for runners running a relay race.
yeah.
And the first runner has actually gotten it to the second runner and handed it off. This was just like fumbled on the way during the first leg. And now the second runner had to come back and like pick it off the ground with bloody
She's
Elaine.
got skin knees and no teeth from falling on the track. And
She's like, hey, passing the baton.
Can't wait to work on the team. They're like, we're good. So yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. I still think, we should at least prognosticate a little bit. I think Amber's got a very, very hard case to win on appeal. Even though it was a nightmare, trials always have a lot of hiccups along the way that don't turn into material errors that will cause reversal of a jury verdict. Once you have a jury verdict, it's virtually impossible to get that reversed. It does happen, absolutely, if things were bad enough. But she was more of sort of inept and bumbling rather than cause such a critical error
but
in my mind.
The appeal won't be based on ineffective assistance of counsel. I don't think it'll just be on the judge's ruling allowing certain evidence and not allowing other evidence. So Bill Maher, this is fascinating stuff, right? He came out on a show on Friday
God,
night.
he does it again.
He's
right?
causing a stir, Bill Maher.
does-
Every week, just disrupting everything.
Yeah, and he was really making the point that actors are actors, and we shouldn't be criticizing either actors or people who cast those actors because they don't fall into the specific either a cultural, national, or in other ways,
Sexual orientation, whatever,
of the person that they're portraying. He said that's poppycock. This is all about acting. I think we have some sound of what he said.
And finally, new rule: casting directors have to stop listening to the casting police and go back to doing their job, which is picking the best actor for the role. Now, I mention this because a lot of people lately are either apologizing for or calling on others to apologize for playing roles they call appropriation. James Franco was just chosen to play Fidel Castro, and John Leguizamo posted, "No more appropriation. Boycott." I don't got a problem with Franco, but he ain't Latino. Okay, but John Leguizamo is Colombian American. He ain't a Venetian, but he played one. Why don't we just go by merit and let the best actor win? Which seems like what happened when Ana de Armas just got picked to play Marilyn Monroe, even though she's Cuban with an accent. maybe she should play Fidel Castro, and James Franco can play Marilyn Monroe, and then we can all...
Bill, I see what you did there.
I think you're making a point, though, right?
This point's interesting. The whose ox is being gored point.
Yes.
Didn't you like this point a little
Yes.
bit where he says, John Leguizamo is an interesting example. He says, John Leguizamo says, how can James Franco play Fidel Castro, the most famous Cuban on earth? James Franco's not Cuban. And he says, well, interesting. John played a Venetian. I believe he's referring to Tybalt in Romeo and Juliet. And he played an Italian plumber, referring to Mario. And so what
Mario
Mario and Luigi. Of the Mario brothers. Do you know Mario's last name is Mario? His name is Mario Mario.
It is?
Absolutely.
I did not know
They
that.
are the Mario brothers, and his name is Mario. And you would always say, I'm the Kaufman brothers. Anyway,
Moving on.
his name's Mario Mario. Anyway, what I'm saying is he says, look, if you're transgender or you're gay, are you now going to only be able to play gay roles?
Right.
Only be able to play transgender roles?
Right.
That's not a good thing.
But it's always the punching up, punching it down thing, right? You can always play up in the social structure, and that's what John Leguizamo would say. He said, "I'm Colombian American. I'm the lower rung of the social stratus. I can play up to the Venetian,
yes,
but."
Or to the Italian plumber.
Right.
Right.
Or to the video game character.
Maybe that's a lateral move.
But you see a lot of actors. I mean, Tom Hanks has apologized for playing his
course.
role in Philadelphia.
Oh, in Philadelphia, you're right.
For playing a gay
But why should
gay
he?
man.
He was phenomenal in that role. He
Right.
hit it out of the park. Should he really apologize?
He won for 2 disadvantage roles in a row. He won
Yeah.
for Philadelphia, then he wins for Forrest Gump. Does he have to apologize for both movies?
But there is a global point, which is shouldn't actors be actors, play whoever they want, and why don't we get out of the way? There's also the practical point. If somebody of the fictional Forrest Gump's, I think his IQ was mentioned being like well below 100.
Yes.
You're not going to find that actor to play that role, right?
be- Yes,
so you're
it's
basically
hard
saying
for
we
that
can't
actor to
have
play the
right,
role.
right? So you're just not going to have those roles. Which it eventually sort of rolls in on itself and combusts, right?
Right.
It's people should play whatever actor they can hack.
I thought it was interesting. He said also it's kind of cool when you mix these up. He pointed to Hamilton at some point and he said there's a black George Washington. It's obviously George Washington wasn't black, but that's a
the punching up,
cool,
punching
interesting
down.
punching up. I guess it's all punching up, punching down. But when you get into that's the argument, what is up, what is down, you're really starting to dice humanity up in strange ways because maybe there are certain cases where it's very clear a rich white person and a disadvantaged black person. But when you're in the middle, a Colombian playing this, where's the punching up?
There was
and
once a
punching
time
down?
in Hollywood, 40, 50 years ago, Breakfast at Tiffany's being the great example where they would cast white people in roles that were clearly intended to be people of color.
Mickey Rooney.
Right.
at Breakfast at Tiffany's, where he's doing that awful stereotype impersonation of a Japanese character throughout, and that's awful. We've moved past that so that kind of thing doesn't happen. But I think the idea, and maybe you guys disagree with me, the idea that a straight person can't play a gay person or a gay person straight, or a James Franco who is an Italian American can't play a Cuban American, I think that is not a good argument.
It's starting to become too much.
It's
right?
ridiculous.
Like,
There's intentionality, right? Mickey Rooney was making fun of Japanese people. Forrest Gump is not making fun of.
Right.
Tom Hanks is not making fun of mentally disabled people, and quite the opposite. He's doing an uplifting story. So intentionality to me is where it rises and falls. What is the role doing? Is it intending to poke fun? Is blackface intending to make fun?
But then you can go
black...
farcical. You can go Days of Thunder, and you had Robert Downey Jr. dress up in blackface.
Not Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder is a Tom
sorry.
Cruise movie.
No.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
And against a farce, and then it's okay again. But when you're caught in that middle place,
It's acting.
Yeah,
It's
it's acting.
acting. And
Right.
Bill Maher even said people become actors so they can spend their lives not being who they are, which I
Right.
feel like is
right.
So speaking of actors, let's talk a little bit about Will. Will
Will
Smith and
and
Jada
Jada
have publicly surfaced for the first time since the Oscar slap, seeing both of them. We saw Will, I think he was in India. There were some pictures of him maybe in an ashram when he was trying to
and he
sort of
obviously
heal
put out
himself.
his huge apology video right about a month ago.
His apology video
We've not
where
seen the two of them together.
here they are. So, and it's obvious that this is now.
We haven't seen two of them apart either. So.
we just haven't seen the two of them.
But this is now the public relations machine in overdrive, right? Because
Yeah.
where the shots are taken is very sort of interesting.
It's
at
curated.
Nobu.
It's-
It's
yeah,
curated.
yeah,
I mean, you
exactly.
go to Nobu. For people who don't know how LA works, You go to Nobu, Malibu, it's to be spotted and have shots
It's the
taken of you.
Kardashian, Kanye West, they're the denizens of that place. They're there all the time, and now you go there because you want to be seen.
Right. And this is a very curated photo. He's walking out and leading with a smile, the Will Smith 1,000-watt smile, and Jada's falling behind, I think, holding onto his pants, looking not like a dutiful wife, but looking like they are a team.
They look like a team.
I think looking like she's reining him in. I actually thought the photograph was interesting.
Oh,
they weren't
I
arm in arm.
read that.
I didn't understand why they weren't side by side holding hands. I didn't understand why she was just holding on to the back of his pants.
Now it could be that.
Give me that.
Now
So
it
did
could
it backfire?
be.
Was that intentional?
I didn't see the shot. I would have liked to see the shot from behind to see if he was sort of leading through a pap crush.
That's
and
what I was
she
trying to
was
figure
kind
out.
of just kind of getting into his wake and holding forward, but it didn't look like that from the photo I saw. It almost, I don't know. I thought it was bad optics, honestly. That she's kind of like holding him back.
Yeah,
almost,
I wanted to
which
see
is-
more like hand-holding smiling.
Right,
I was
exactly,
surprised by the. I mean, again, I don't think there must have been something going on that he had to lead her through
But
the
he
crowd.
did. They've
They
got
did have security with them.
Why don't
yeah.
they leave to the pap crush and
But
hold?
maybe he was trying to show strong protector. He's leading through the fray while she sort of follows behind, although that's what got him in trouble, I guess,
What
with
a-
the slap. He
what
was
a-
trying to protect her.
tool Will Smith is. I'm sorry. He just is. I've got no patience for that. It's sort of he and Alec Baldwin to me are cut from the same cloth.
There's a lot of narcissism.
very
that,
very
like,
smart, very narcissistic. Think they can say anything and sort of
It's
you know,
working. His apology video worked. Now this will work. I'm like, he's getting back in
I
there.
guess so.
He's a smart,
Don't
smart
forget he
guy.
can't go to the
He's
Academy
got a
Awards
huge
for 10
team.
years.
No, oh well.
It's okay. He wasn't going to win any Oscars. He got to make up for whatever, the Serena Williams movie, but it wasn't happening anytime soon.
the Serena Williams movie.
Anyway, moving on, sad news. If you're a Tom Holland fan and you go to watch his updates on Instagram or Twitter, because he has now officially left both platforms. So he came out and said he's been absent from Twitter and Instagram the last few weeks, but he came on Sunday to say he has deleted both apps because they've become detrimental to his mental state.
Hi guys, so I've been trying to make this video for about an hour now. For someone that has spent the last, I don't know, 13, 14 years, however long I've been acting. Is it that long? Yeah, it probably is that long. I cannot seem to say what I need to say without umming and ahhing every 5 minutes, so I'm going to try again. So, I have taken a break from social media for my mental health, because I find Instagram and Twitter to be overstimulating, to be overwhelming. I get caught up and I spiral when I read things about me online, and ultimately it's very detrimental to my mental state. So I decided to take a step back and delete the app.
Yeah, I think this is okay.
Yeah,
Sure. The thing I always question, I don't question the sincerity. From what I hear, he sounds like he sincerely finds it overstimulating, overwhelming, wants to take a step back, and it's upsetting to him. I always find it curious that someone who has this sort of sensitivity leans into a profession where it's obvious that there's going to be a lot of attention. If you're uncomfortable with a lot of attention, becoming an actor is the worst thing you can do, because the successful version comes with loads of attention. Like if you succeed in it,
but you don't always
this.
plan that out. You don't know how you're going to react to the kind of negative comments until you actually live with them, right?
Also, every successful actor or actress always winds up saying they don't read, whether it be back in the day, it was the tabloid magazines. Now it's social media. They don't go on the internet and read all the negative stuff people say about them. I mean, almost every, like Jennifer Aniston famously was like, I don't look at any of the magazines. I don't read that stuff because it does affect you. Even if you're a really strong person, if you're just inundated all the time with negativity about yourself, it's going to be.
Well, let me ask you questions. We are exactly 1/100 millionth as famous as Tom Holland, and we get 1/100 millionth the number of comments. But sometimes we get negative comments about us in response to the YouTube videos for the podcast, for the show, whatever it is.
We are all very fat, according to
We
the
are
internet.
extremely fat and very stupid.
Point taken, though.
So it doesn't bother me in the least, and I've talked to Derek, I've never talked to you about this. You can say whatever you want about me. It does not bother me. There's nothing that anybody could say out there. If somebody achieves real fame and it's constant, does it break down even the strongest people, or is it a certain type of person? Are there people as famous as Tom Holland who really don't care?
It depends how strong of a constitution you have as a
So you do
person.
think it is based on the person?
I think so. I think if you are, absolutely and perfectly secure in who you are and your intelligence and your looks and all those things, it's hard to penetrate it. It's a sliding scale. It's harder and harder to penetrate when there are more and more eyeballs or more chisels trying to break down your humanity in some way. You have to have a stronger version of that. but it comes down to the person. I mean, mine is not as strong as some people, but I get fewer comments, so I have to have
right.
I have to have less of a defense.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I were Tom Holland, I'd need to have like a really like brick foundation. I don't have that, and,
but
and thank goodness I don't get a lot.
I remember every comment ever.
Right. Well, we should not invite you into what Derek and I say about you because it is nasty.
This trend is interesting though that we're seeing all these celebrities coming out and talking about their
agree.
mental health, right? So we just saw the singer. I can't remember. I'm blanking.
Oh, Demi Lovato?
No.
Who just left his tour?
Shawn Mendes.
Shawn Mendes, just left his tour because he said he has to focus on his mental health. So
and
I think
the
it's
athletes, we've seen Simone Biles,
right,
we've seen Naomi Osaka.
So I think
this
it's
is a
really
trend.
interesting that everyone's coming forward and like it kind of, saying I'm having trouble with my mental health and I'm going to work on this.
Right.
Because that didn't happen 10 years ago.
With actors, I find it interesting though because they require the attention to be famous. Like an athlete, Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles, I can see you committing yourself to your craft and becoming an Olympian and not worrying about the attention you get. You're just sort of perfecting a craft. Part of celebrity, Tom Holland, I guess your acting is its own craft, but part of it is cultivating the following.
I feel far less for Tom Holland, et cetera, than I do for every 15-year-old girl out there who feels the compulsion to be on social media and is taken down once you're there, and it's impossible.
Right.
Social media,
sort of have to participate socially in social media.
Awful thing. Yeah, you can't exist socially without being on social media.
Right.
And very few people are willing to not participate. Tom Holland can still participate fully in pop culture and do all the things he wants to do. When you're a kid, you can't, and social media just tears you down. It's a terrible, terrible thing.
So will he come back? That's my final question. Is when this is a break, is it sort of he gets lulled back into
does
a
it hurt his
security?
career? I think does it hurt his career is a question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does.
It hurts me. I want to see some Tom Holland headshots on the Instagram. It really hurts me.
He should just filter for Katie's positive comments, and he'd feel great. He'd feel great. Take your shirt
looking
off.
good. Take your
Actually,
shirt off.
that's a good idea. Positive or negative, and you just filter by
Just
him.
filter it.
That's what Donald Trump famously does, right? He would get binders full of news articles that were positive about him that he'd read every morning to get him pumped up.
Is there anyone, that's a good point, is there anyone more impervious to negative comments than Donald Trump? I know we think of him as thin-skinned, but he actually receives a ton of you're dumb, you're fat, and he just persists and bloviates his way through life.
But it also cripples him, right?
Not publicly.
Well, I think that's wrong. He goes out there and he complains about people with physical illnesses and mental problems and makes fun of them. And I think it destroys him. He just responds with anger and animus as opposed to like backing away.
Yeah, he's never moved through the stages. He's just stayed on anger. All right, that'll do it for us. See you on Wednesday, everyone.
Later.